Hey, what's up? It's Shannon from Godsmack, and you're listening to and watching Artisan News Service. It took us about a week to get the whole solo together, and see, they had been doing it with the old drummer Tommy, but it was more of Sully would just come out with a couple bits of percussion. So it's actually the part where Sully and I face off on concert. That's a part of Get Up, Get Out, a song from the first record. So that whole groove is there, and then we just figured, we'll give us 4 bars to each. It's cool. The cool thing about it is we can do different fills every night, you know what I mean? And it's been funny. So, sometimes one of us will flub a fill or whatever, and it's really cool. And the difference on this tour, as opposed to the first leg of the Faceless, was we were playing arenas, so we had this big giant stage, and there was what they call a garage behind me, and his drums would come up out of this thing behind me. So it's like when we would get going, if somebody would do a killer fill, I'd be like craning my neck around to try and look at him, and it didn't work out. This is a lot better. We can actually face off head to head. Yeah, it always does. We both been playing drums for over 30 years, both of us. So, and it's smooth. As far as the stick tossing thing, that could go night to night. As a matter of fact, that's the first time I've ever caught a stick that he throws over towards me. Like, I usually don't miss, knock on wood, I don't miss my stick tosses way up because I'm 6 months we've been out. But, and I throw a lot. But it's a whole different angle catching it from when someone's throwing a stick at you, than catching it from coming down from the sky. And that's the first time I caught one
Wow.
in New York City. So that was huge.
I saw it, man. I saw it.
That was huge. Yeah, and a lot of times they're downright boring, even if they're technically awesome. And it's just people are like they'll go to the bathroom at that point, go get a beer. The drum solo. So yeah, I think it's cool. We incorporated. We wanted to pay tribute also to the drummers that made us start drumming, Neil Peart, John Bonham. So we got that in there, and even kids, we'll throw the Aerosmith "Walk This Way" in. We're on our 30s, but even kids know that song. It's just a universal, language right there. But yeah, that was the whole trick though too, to not make it too long, not make it too drawn out. We wanted to get the bit in the beginning where Sully can hit the hand drums because he's got great hands, really great hands. So yeah, I think we accomplished what we wanted to do, which was have a drum solo that wasn't boring. No, so you got to remember that I've known Sully since 1986, 87. And his band, Lex Luthor, was opening for my band. It was called Wrathchild America back in the day. And, you know, he had come up to me. I had influenced Sully as a drummer, but yet he was technically trained. Like, he had taken lessons for years and years, started playing when he was 3.5, you know, where I didn't even pick up the sticks till I was 10. And, you know, as we remained friends throughout the years, ever since those late 80s when we met. And, you know, like, ironically, I ended up, some manager that I had met had asked me, do I know a drummer? And, you know, Sully hadn't gotten a break yet. He was still playing in the cover band and stuff. And I actually said, this guy from Boston, my friend Sully, and gave the number. He ended up getting the gig. It was Malaya Rage on Epic Records, you know what I mean? So I helped him out, and then all those years later, you know, karma, what comes around goes around. And, you know, I'd quit Amen, and I was basically just resigned to, like, you know, I would always play drums, but I was really, I lost the dream of, you know, I will be a rock star and I will make it in a band. I was just more resigned to, you know what, I can make a living playing in session work and doing records and stuff and still playing the drums, you know. And then there it is, the phone rings, you know, 2 weeks after I left my old band. And it was Sully, and it was on. The whole thing with Amen was, you know, Amen is Casey. Casey Chaos is Amen. And, you know, I think we had something really special and something definitely underground and obviously hardcore, you know what I mean? And basically when we did the Roadrunner record, and there was like, they put out, at the same time our release, they put out new records by Slipknot, Cold Chamber, Typo Negative, and like another big band. And we knew, you know, after 6 weeks on tour, they pulled all tour support. So we got our lawyers on there and got out of the Roadrunner deal, right? And I magically picked up a huge deal with Virgin Records. And then it was Ross Robinson and Casey Chaos that I guess came with the idea to make the most non-commercial album ever on a major label, you know, in a total commercial society that we live in. And, you know, the rest of us were just like, well, okay, you know. And then so here we had this record that had no single. Every single song had some kind of cursing and, you know, abortion and just, you know, out of control things that no radio station would touch. And so we went out and they gave us tour support and everything, you know. It definitely wasn't the label's fault, and the band just didn't sell. And what happened as a result was, you know, we're all adults, and like I have a wife and a kid, you know, and a $800 a month rent at that time. And I came off the road 6 months with Amen, and I had $500 in the bank, you know what I mean? And so, and I'm looking at 3 weeks until I got to pay rent, or me and my family are basically really out of a house, you know? So, I quit. I'm like, I can't do this. And I love the band. And also I must mention that at the time, we had been dropped from Virgin also. You know, after the whole touring cycle was over, they had the option to make another record for us. And they said, look, you know, it didn't sell. And so we parted ways with Virgin, you know. And that's when I parted ways with the band, you know. And I gave it, you know, because I'd always run my mouth. I love that band. I'm still passionate about Amen. And I would always say that's the last band I'll be in, you know. So when I quit Amen, that's what I was saying. I was resigned to just not be back in another band. But, man, destiny called on the phone. You know what I mean? And that's the way I looked at it. I'm back in this, you know. Somehow what comes around goes around. Absolutely, man. Matter of fact, that was one of the hardest things I ever had to do. And I didn't do it over the phone. I drove down there and looked him right in the eyes and said, dude, you know. And he was totally like, man, that's cool, you know. He's a great person. He's just he's a bit fucked up, you know what I mean, on drugs and stuff. And it's not really his fault. He's got this lung disorder that it's hard for him to breathe, and he has to take all these drugs, and alcohol doesn't help, you know. But no, I wish him well, and I talk to him about once every 2 months. Sonny Mayo, who's in Head PE now, I talk to once a week. And here's one for a story, man. So I joined God. They get rid of Tommy Stewart, or he quits, whatever happened. I never really got into that. You know, I joined the band. We started writing. I met Tommy before. He was real nice to me. So, but however it happened, he left, and I joined Godsmack, and then Toomer John quits Amen and hooks up with Neil and Pete from Ultraspank, who are starting a new project called Low Pro that I was supposed to play on the record, by the way. Neil had already been to my house, played all the demos for me, and I'm like, sure, I'll do it. And then, like a week after that's when Sully had called. So I called Neil immediately, dude, I can't do it. I'm going to go and do Godsmack. And he's like, oh, that's cool, congratulations. And then next thing I know, Toomer's calling me, dude, we got Tommy Stewart. I'm like, yay. It's a small, small world in this business,
it's
man.
Like, this
musical drummer chairs.
Yeah,
I'm hard to offend, dude. Don't worry. That's completely true. Yeah, it's like I was saying earlier, and I hate to sound like I'm bragging, but the simple fact is I was influenced Sully Erna's drumming, and I was a big influence. And like Robbie was saying, he always heard three names: Pert, Bonham, and Larkin, and that's how Sully. So it was funny when I was learning those first two records, which Sully did indeed play the drums on the first two. I played the new album, by the way, but as I was learning it, I would notice certain fills and the way he would do certain things. And I'm like, wait a minute. And he's like, yeah, I got that off Route Child America's Climbing the Walls album, Smothered Darkness or whatever. And I'm like, oh, okay. So it was so easy and felt so natural for me to learn his stuff anyway that when it came to writing the new record, it was just great. I mean, it was like when he would play a riff on the guitar, I would start to play the drums and he'd stop and go, hold on, that's exactly what I would have played, and I'm like, cool. And if there was ever a time, because, being such an awesome drummer anyway, sometimes he'll come to me with a beat, do gat that, do bap, and I'll bam and play it, and it feels right. And there's never been any kind of ego with me and Sully, man, because we're so much alike that we go around saying we're separated at birth. It's like he's a long lost brother or something. I mean, about everything. It's just there's been certain really scary things that have happened that were like, for instance, just last week on the tour bus, we're just standing there and he's making some beans, and we both at the same exact time just did a fill on our leg, and it was this. It's the John Bonham. We just both happen to have this same song in our head, but it's in the solo. And we both were just standing there, vegging, not talking or whatever, and we both went to biddle 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 bap, and it started and ended at the exact same time. And Sully was like, "Dude, don't even fucking look at me, man. Like, get out of my head." I'm like, "Get out of my head, dude."
Well, that's good. No, that's it's quite amazing. It's like there's waves out there, and you guys are both tuned into the same thing.
Yeah, and just saying the same things at the same time, or it's been crazy, It all started in Miami when we went to do this record. We all four moved in together with Kevin, our assistant. So here we are, me, basically my friend Sully and Robbie and Tony, who were strangers, I just played with for a couple weeks, and now we're moving in, living together where you see each other every day, all night, and not one argument, not one little no bad vibes at all the whole time, man. And it's carried through all the way up through this tour. And I'm sure it's not what people think touring is. It's not the constant party. I mean, we party, we have great parties and spread love and have lots of fun, but a lot of it's hard downtime, sitting around, riding down the road for 600 miles, in a bus with real close to everybody, But we feel really blessed that we get along so well, because God knows a lot of bands don't. No, man, they're just both exceptionally nice guys, really. And as soon as I came in, they made me feel really welcome, and they're very warm. And again, we're all the same age, so we get on the same talks about the same bands and what the same sports or whatever. We all just are alike in many ways, personality-wise, and we make each other laugh, and we were all raised in the same like blue-collar families. There's no rich boys or extremely poor boys in the band, and out of all of us, ironically, Sully had it the worst in his childhood. As far as he pretty much grew up in a ghetto. He showed me where he grew up, and I was like, damn, But me and Robbie and Tony are pretty all, middle class white Americans, And so it's exactly the same now, I swear to you, as the week I joined. You know what I mean? And again, I must stress that I love those guys like brothers, and we've never once have I looked cross-eyed at either one of those dudes. Yeah, basically, man, I approach that like, all right, look, it's all about, without sounding cliche, but it is all about the fans that bought those records, right? So you don't want to fuck with it too much and change it, because then the fans hear it and they're like, it doesn't sound like the song I love. You know what I mean? So, but I could put my flavor to it, and being in an acoustic situation also, it's more stripped down, so the drums actually shine through better on an acoustic track. Because with the wall, that's the hardest thing about being in a metal rock band or whatever, is for a drummer, is once they add the walls of chunk guitars, mess of boogie sounds, and once everything's layered on there, the little things that happen on the drum kit, like grace notes or splash accents, they get lost in the mix, And so it was a pleasure to go and play acoustically. And I'll say this about that acoustic record also. I had never played hand drums before. Like in all my 30 years of playing, I just always was just so kit-oriented that I even had bongos given to me a long time ago. Bongos and the big congas. And I ended up using the congas as like lampstands in my living room. I never hit them. And then here we are, though. We're like 3 weeks away from going to do this acoustic record. And I'm like, I don't play hand drums. He's like, that's all right, I'll play them. But I want to play, I want to play drums. So I went out and just bought a bunch of instructional videos and taught myself in 3 weeks how to play hand drums, And it was great. I'm so glad I did it because, again, we're in the studio, Sully and I, facing each other across his row of congas and bongos, and we all had it was so much fun, man. We're getting the grooves on. It was killer. But, yeah, and then I tracked the drum kit also, and Sully did a song also on the drum kit, and we're good like that also. Like Sully played 2 songs off the new record too, and it wasn't because I couldn't do it, obviously, because we play so much alike anyway, but it's because you just you leave your ego at the door in situations like that. Like, for instance, the story is, the truth of it is I had been gone from my wife and kid for 5 months at this point, and I finished all the drum tracks on the record and flew home. Well, when it came to vocals, these 2 tracks that we didn't fly. Like, he just couldn't come up with it, but they were around the same tempo, so he took those 2 songs and made one song, which ended up being Realign out of those 2 songs that we had written. And he called me, dude, I have to retrack this song. Do you mind? Do you want to fly in? And like I said, I've been going for 5 months. I hadn't seen my daughter. And I'm like, no, track it, dude. Have fun. Do it, I didn't care, about a song on the record or whatever. It's all about the song anyway, not who played the drums. Although I would have been extremely bummed out if I was in the old drummer situation where, you didn't get to play on the record. Because, but that was a different thing. You know what I mean? And it wasn't anything to do with with ego. At the end of the day, I'd spoken to Mudrock. He produced that second record, and he said he's the one that made the call, not Sully, to have Sully play the drums. Sully was just standing there, and I guess the vibe just wasn't right and didn't sound like Godsmack or something. But so I'm fortunate that I happen to have had part in Sully's life, back in the day, way back, because it's a respect thing. No, I've always been this same guy. It's I find it really hard to even be around people that have their big attitudes, and I won't. I surround myself by people that are down to earth, and if someone comes near me that's like that, I'm still polite, but I'll turn around and walk and get away from them, man. Keep the bad vibes away from me, that's all. But fortunately, there's very few bands that I've met, which obviously I won't name, but that have that kind of attitude, I'll tell you, let me say this about that. There's people that love theirself, and then there's people that are comfortable in their own skin, and I'm comfortable in my own skin, that's all. I thought of that for a long time, because I actually met this rock star, and I'm like, that guy really loves himself, and I hope I never appear like that. But but then again, I'm confident, and I know I'm good at what I do, and I don't want to look like I'm trying to be too humble and I'm acting or something, because you have to achieve greatness. You strive for it, and if you get it, then you're great, right? But you don't want to say, hey, I'm great. So I thought I was on the bus, and I was writing this book, actually, which is a whole nother story, but I came up with that comfortable in your own skin thing, I love that. Yeah, I got a couple of them written. I've always been really busy with music, and on downtime I'll write. And I've got a novel done, and then another book of short stories, and also this other book it's called The Musician's Little Life Book, and it's from 26 years of actually playing from clubs to stadiums, arenas, everything, in a van, in a Winnebago, in a tour bus, you name it, I've done it. I was 6 years in a van before my band even got signed. You know what I mean? So, and I have learned so much on just how to live, and it was all inspired by H. Samuel Jackson's Life's Little Instruction book. And it was like suggestions, observations on how to live a happy and rewarding life. Well, I just added in the music business. You know what I mean? And it's all just little anecdotes and suggestions, pointers, tips. And that was one of them, Don't fall in love with yourself, but be comfortable in your skin. That would be one. See, I haven't. Writing is different than playing music in that it's you, and it's just you, and you don't have your boys to back you up, and it's like, I guess if you're a solo artist and you write all your music like Trent Reznor or something, it must have been really hard for Trent to let that out to the world. That's his soul, and writing to me, I let my drum tech read my novel, and now Chris from Edema is the second person on the planet that's reading my first novel, the drummer. And I've just been holding it really close to me, and I've re-edited it 5 times. I want it to be perfect before I put it in someone's hands, that it could actually unleash it to people who know me, because it is kind of weird stuff, fiction, like some Bukowski meets Clive Barker, kind of in between there, Anne Rice thrown in. I mean, I'm not saying I'm as good as those people. I'm saying that's what I aspire to be, like somewhere in between those three. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I tell you this too about I stressed reading so much to young bands starting out, and geez, how do you survive out there for so long? And because you're surrounded by people, but you're lonely. It's the weirdest thing. But I always say read, 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 write, write, write. You know. And at first it starts with read, read, read. Once you get to where you can read a couple novels a week, you'll see how hours fly by down the road, and all of a sudden, wow, I'm in the next town, and but yet you've taken yourself away from the grind somehow. It's a better form of escapism than drugs and alcohol, which I have nothing against drugs or alcohol. I definitely believe that if you're doing it as celebration, then it's good. But if you're doing it as escapism, it's bad, real bad. But you still need to escape. So writing and reading became my escapism. Thanks, man. And yeah, ironically, Sully, how I say it's always the same, he just finished his first book. It's completely different in that it's an autobiography. But it's cool. It's not your typical rock star autobiography where it's all about the chicks and drugs and drinking and all the wild, crazy stuff. This is about from the time he was born until Godsmack got signed. So it's not even Godsmack in there. But I mean, it does talk about in the very, very beginning of the stages up till they got signed, basically. And then because the rest is public known anyway, public domain. But it talks about his childhood, and it's really interesting. I mean, he had some crazy things happen in his life. Some that just made me laugh out loud, and some, like, he was going through bad girl problems when he wrote the whole first record, and a lot of those songs, Keep Away and all that, was about this chick, and you'll get tears in your eyes reading about, just the heartbreak and breaking of hearts and just the whole thing. It's a really good book, man. He's going to release his, yeah. I mean, he's already talking to people. He wants to see, he did it in a very straight up autobiographical way. And so there's suggestions being thrown at him to make it into a more of a novelization, but still nonfiction, but more novelization to make the book flow better. So he edited it like 3 times, and then he sent it to some people to read, and that was their input. So now he's trying to decide, well, do I make it, more of a novelization, or do I keep it the way it is? And ultimately it'll be his decision, and he will have that book released. It's very, very interesting, I'm telling you. I couldn't believe some of the crap he did when he was like 14, Tour? Well, I'll say this. We won't tour unless it's full-fledged. Like, for instance, you'll never see us, well, I never say never, but you probably won't see us playing our heavy stuff and then all of a sudden the lights go down and they come up and we're all on stools for like a little 3 or 4 songs. That won't happen. I mean, we look at it like you come to see Godsmack, you're going to get a heavy rock show. But if the acoustic record comes out, which now it's been pushed back to like March or April, because Faceless is still rocking, and we're like, we don't want it to die yet. So if the thing comes out and does good, this acoustic thing, then we could do a full blown acoustic tour of like small venues and feng shui the stage, you know what I mean, of incense, candles, that kind of vibe. I could see us doing that, and that'd be extremely fun and extremely easy compared to what we're used to. Like we just get 2 buses or something and 1 truck and we could go. Where now it's like 6 buses, 5 tractor trailers full of crap. It's big. Yeah. And it's scaled down from what our first tour was, 7 tractor trailers full of stuff, man. And it was crazy. It gets overwhelming, Yeah. It's like, all right, we're a rock band. All we need is light and a PA, Yeah. The drum solo helps. Man, that's a good question. Because like I said, I've been just challenged my whole career. It seems like I could, I never got a break as far as the whole business end of it goes. I signed some nasty, bad contracts that are still haunt me to this day, shit like that. But I guess the biggest challenge is being away from home. That's always it. It always comes back to that, especially if you have a kid like I do. And that's the biggest challenge is to not lose my mind and get too drunk in my room and wake up looking like a worm. Shaved. And sometimes that happens. But as far as like the band music or, touring videos, there's no more challenges. It's all just becomes to trying to be perfect, every night. Trying and trying. Okay, I got the answer. The biggest challenge is to try not to lose your passion and become a machine that every night you go through the motions. The biggest challenge for me is definitely trying to keep the passion, and before every single show, man, whether it's listening to Jane's Addiction or listening to your favorite band to get you to feel the love, the passion that you started playing your instrument for in the first place, to where it's not just another gig. Treat every show like it's your last show you'll ever play, and that'll help your passion. Yeah, we'll listen. Yeah, exactly, man. And listening to your favorite, whether it's Led Zeppelin or it might be Korn, whoever it is that really just you really feel passionate about. With me, it's Jane's and Sully. We're always Jane's Addiction before every show. We might drink a little wine or even do a shot of whiskey. We're never drunk on stage, but sometimes you need a little help after 6 months of playing, basically the same songs over and over and over. How do you play them passionately without changing them? Well, you have to definitely put your head into a mindset and just kind of psych yourself out, every single night, every single show. And kind of like, I'm my other show of my life. This is it. I want it to be the best show I've ever played, And usually that's enough. And I will say, though, sometimes you just go on stage and you find yourself going through the motions anyway. And when that happens, me and Sully both have talked about that also. And you just close your eyes, man, and forget about the crowd, forget about the venue, and just listen to your band, and just pretend you're in the practice place, man. And, usually that feeling will come back and the passion. And I tell you, every time it does for me, too. I've never, even if I have a bad show, there were points in that show that I was proud of, Yeah, yeah, it does. Particularly for me, my present this year is I get to see my daughter. It's already been, I saw her once in the last 2.5 months, for 2 days. And I won't see her again until 2 days before Christmas, you know what I mean? So that'll be my big present. I'll fly home and she'll come running up to me, all 5.5 years of her, and it's just a special age. And so yeah, it makes it, special. But, how much more special can Christmas with a 5-year-old be? You know what I mean? It's like, even if I'd been home for 3 months, Christmas, their whole life changed. Now I can't talk to her without, her saying something about Santa. Christmas is coming, She's stoked. And you can remember it too. You start to remember how you were, and you could barely sleep,
Dude, what's your favorite Christmas memory? Do you have any specific one?
Yeah, when I got that sparkle blue drum kit.
How old were you?
I was 10.
Tell the story.
I was 10. And then Sully, of course, got his first kit, sparkle blue drum set. We were like, shut up. That was just crazy. But yeah, that I remember just running, knowing that, because I'd asked him for it. And of course, they never told me, but I know my old man, and I knew he got me the drums. That Remo drum kit, little 3-piece, no hi-hats. And it's funny, an interesting story there is I'm like, I need hi-hats. You need hi-hats to play, Creedence Clearwater and the Beatles and stuff. And so my Uncle Mike, his present to me was the Iron Butterfly In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida album. And he said, if you learn that drum solo, it's like a 10-minute solo. You learn that drum solo, and I'll buy you a pair of hi-hats. And that's my Christmas present to you. And 2 weeks later, I'm like, call him up. Come on over, man.
You probably thought you'd never do it. I got 2 years on this. That's what he's thinking, right?
And it was easy. It was an easy solo, I was already trying to learn, like, Peter Criss and Rush at that time. So I was like, In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida, all right. Well, firstly, we go to Europe with Metallica, and it's just Metallica, Godsmack all across Europe, where no one knows who we are over there. For whatever reasons, the band broke in the States, didn't break worldwide. And So we're very fortunate, you know, to get this Metallica tour. So we're gonna hopefully conquer Europe, and then come home, do Christmas with the families, and take January completely off, and you know, a well-deserved break after 6 months, and then hopefully February, March, you know, depending on what this new single Realign does. If Realign does well and holds us over while we're in Europe, then we'll come out and do another states tour. You know, why not? I mean, we'd love to do it, and as long as we're playing places like this that we're getting good crowds, you know, everything's working really well right now for us at this level, you know, and if that can continue, then we'll continue it until like April, March, April, you know, just 6 weeks maybe more in the States, and then it's kind of perfect that the EP got bumped back, because then we released the EP while we're writing the fourth record. And we're talking again about just the four of us and our assistant just moving into some house somewhere in a city, probably not Miami again, because then, you know, you meet people and you make friends, and that's defeats the purpose of getting out, you know. So we'll probably try and find some city, you know, that's warm and beautiful, and just go and rent a house again and write number 4 while that acoustic thing, like, is a buffer. And 4 will be heavy, and we've already written like 3 or 4 songs. One completely dumb, we did at Soundcheck today, by the way. No lyrics, but... And then we got 3 or 4 that are like, the basic skeletons are there, and it's really, it's heavy, and it's good, and it sounds like Godsmack, you know?
Names and titles for any of these things yet? Or?
Nothing yet, because that all comes later. Like, as a rule, we do the music first, and then Sully sits in his room and just listens to it and comes up with melodies, and lyrics come, you know? But only very few songs for this band, like Voodoo was one of them, that were written solely from his melody and lyric. But most of them come musically first, you know? I don't know about on the Faceless record. I don't think any of them were written lyrically first, because I would just remember, you know, we would go in to play the songs all day, and then Sully would grab the tape. We'd make, you know, 8-track recordings of it, and he'd grab the tape like a kid at Christmas and run home to start, you know, listening for melodies. Well, that'll be like one of my biggest dreams come true, you know? I mean, God, if it weren't for Metallica, who knows what would have happened to me back in 1984, because things were getting ugly music-wise, you know? That's when the hair bands were all starting to come in, and, you know, everybody's starting to sound the same and look the same and dress like girls and stuff. And, you know, I was getting sucked into that, because I really liked that first Motley Crue record. You know, I had it on leather records and everything, and it was heavy to me. And then, you know, seeing the pictures of them, I didn't know what glam rock was or whatever. I'd never been exposed to like T-Rex and Hannibal Rocks or whatever, but I knew that Motley Crue sounded like a heavy metal band to me. And at the time, it was just all Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, Saxon, Motorhead. You know, that's what I loved. And Motley Crue came out with the live wire and the double bass. I'm like, okay, this might be the new thing. Well, next was, I don't know, all the other bands, you know, Rat, and Cinderella, and Poison, and a slew of bands that were all not like as good as Motley Crue to me. I was like, wait a minute. And then I heard Metallica, and I was like, that's my new favorite band. And, you know, I went to every concert that they would play in the Washington, D.C., Baltimore area, and they changed my life fully. You know, I went from wanting to have, like, you know, big hair to wanting to kill people with big hair. You know? And it saved my career, too, I tell you. Because, you know, a lot of those guys in those bands that were successful back in the day, now they're not doing anything because the stigma of being, like, for instance, you know, I turned down Cinderella back in the day. They had called, man, you know, and they'd sold 1 million and all this crap. And I was just, since Metallica came into my life, I turned down the Cinderella thing, you know. And had I had done that, nothing against those guys. They're great guys and great musicians, and they wrote great records. The second one particularly was awesome. But, like, I would have that stigma of the ex-drummer of Cinderella. And if I wanted to play the music I love, which is heavy rock, no one would look at me, oh, you're in Cinderella, okay. Right. Be like Ricky Rocket trying out for Godsmack or something. You know, Sully wouldn't let him in the door. Exactly. You know what I mean? Nothing against Ricky. He's a nice guy, you know. Absolutely. And I mean, it happens with the whole band, even like Candlebox, for instance. That was a great band, you know. And but since they came out and kind of made it at the same time as all the other grunge bands, you know, they became the tail end grunge band that everybody loved to hate or something. You know what I mean? Like they weren't taken seriously because they were from Seattle, and that was ridiculous. You know,
It's definitely, yeah.
because they sounded nothing like those other
Yeah,
bands.
I know. That was unfortunate. Absolutely unfortunate. I mean, at this stage of the game, I mean, what is there for you left to do, Shannon?
Well, I still want to be in the biggest band in the world, as we all do, you know, and we're content. Like I'll be honest, right now it's really really hard to be a heavy rock band and to tour. And like the places we're playing, these 3,000 and 4,000 seat places, like for instance, Limp Bizkit and Korn teamed up to play these same places that we're playing. You know what I mean? And it's just a hard market right now, and kids have gotten so lazy with being able to just go up on the band's website and you'll get live video from them there, and it's like, why go to the show? You know, I turn on MTV and I can see their videos, and you know, and it takes away the mystery. Like I remember when Judas Priest was my favorite band in the 80s or whatever, and they would come through the concert, I would go see them because I didn't know what they looked like barely. But I'd see their picture on the album, you know, and I'm like, they must rock. And then you see them up on stage running around, and you know, it was just all about the mystery of like Black Sabbath, man. You know, who didn't do press for the longest time, and you never really got to see them unless you actually got your ass to the venue and bought a ticket, and then there they were, man. And it made it an event that you looked forward to for months. Black Sabbath's coming, you know. Where now it's like kids don't even have to look forward to a show. I mean, they've already seen it on DVD.
Right.
You know, and all the excitement's gone. So I think, you know, things change, and hopefully by bands like us and Korn and Biscuit or whatever still just, you know, eating the whole ego thing and saying, you know what, who cares? We'll play the smaller shows. You know, it's not a problem of excess and going out and you know, wanting all the money or whatever. It's mainly you want to play and be the biggest band because then you can put on this amazing concert like Kiss or something, you know, when you go and it's just you get your what, there's more bang for your buck, you know. And so that's always been our thing. Like we want to have the baddest ass concert footage, you know, ever. Like the biggest stage and just the most impressive bombs going off and pyro and video and lasers, you know. And but you know, like on this level we can't use pyro anymore, you know. So anyway, I mean that's when I say we want to be the biggest band in the world. Well, it's mainly so that we can take the biggest show in the world out and be like, come through and just crush and make people go, you know what, that was worth that $50 or whatever tremendous price they have to pay for a ticket nowadays, you know. Do they do that? Oh.
But not as well.
Is it a whole solo thing like we do? I didn't even know that. It makes sense. I mean, they're both tremendous drummers, and especially, I mean, you know, Grohl was definitely a huge influence of mine. I mean, Nirvana, period, was a huge influence. You know, they were just so raw and so good. But I saw Dave Grohl play. I grew up in Virginia, you know, so he's from there. And I saw him play with Scream one time, and his hair was all spiked out. This was way, way back. And I never forgot him from that. And then when I saw him in Nirvana, I'm like, is that Dave Grohl? Because his hair was real long in his face. But I could tell by his style it was. And I went out and bought the second record there, blown away, you know. Like I'd love to see him and Taylor go at it. That'd be killer. But yeah, that'd be
Wouldn't that be
that'd be
weird
something
if, like,
someday.
The drummer faced almost like the WWF of drumming. Here come tag team matchups. You know,
We
be
should
pretty
we should
interesting.
tour Foo Fighters and Godsmack, and then have a grand finale, man, with 4 drum kits rolling out.
How cool would that be?
That'd be sick.
That would.
Well, the thing is the front man has to be able to express himself and get close to the audience. And, it doesn't hurt if you are a freak on top of it, and do things that capture people's imagination, and make them want to look at you, like a Perry Farrell or Scott Weiland, or even Robert Plant or whatever had his thing. Certain singers have their thing. Sully definitely has his thing. He goes up there and slays, and if he was sitting behind a drum kit, the crowd, anywhere back past the front row, and you're not going to feel the intensity of his lyric and his voice, and it's hard. I mean, there was bands like that band Exciter, remember them from Canada, and and you went and saw them, and it was like, after a while you grew bored because the guy's just playing the drum, but I don't think it's the labels that have anything to do with it. I think the singer drummer realizes at some point that he has to make a choice, and sometimes it's his band. They're saying, "Look, dude, your voice is too awesome. You need to get out front." And the guy wouldn't be, "Well, why can't I do both?" He knows the deal. You got to be out there close and keeping people's interest.
Shannon, again, thank you very much for your time. You've been more than gracious. Thank you.
My
very
pleasure.
much.
My pleasure. Thank you.